You're standing at a social gathering, music playing, people laughing, and someone hands you a drink. You smile and say, "No thanks, I'm good." And just like that, the energy changes. Suddenly, you're being interrogated. Wait, why not? Are you pregnant? Are you sick? Come on, just one. Don't be boring. And there you are, in the middle of what's supposed to be a relaxing evening, suddenly having to justify a personal choice that shouldn't require any explanation at all. Sound familiar? Here's the thing. We live in a culture where drinking alcohol is treated as the default setting for human socialization. It's so deeply embedded in our social fabric that choosing not to drink is seen as abnormal, suspicious, or even offensive to some people. But what's really going on in the minds of those who choose sobriety? What psychological patterns drive this decision? And why does it take such remarkable strength to live alcohol-free in a world that practically runs on the stuff? Today we're going deep into the psychology of non-drinkers, and I promise you it's far more complex and fascinating than you might think. The spectrum of sobriety. First, let's clear something up. People who don't drink aren't a monolithic group with a single reason. There's actually a whole spectrum of motivations, each revealing something unique about human psychology, personal values, and our relationship with substances and social expectations. Let's start with the health-conscious abstainers. These are the people who've looked at the research, studied the science, and made a calculated decision based on hard data. They know that alcohol disrupts sleep architecture. They understand it impairs cognitive function. They're aware of the links to various health conditions, from liver disease to certain cancers. They've done the math, and the equation doesn't work in alcohol's favor. But here's what's really interesting. For these individuals, it's not just about avoiding negative consequences. They've discovered something most people completely overlook. They've realized that sobriety doesn't limit their life experience, it actually enhances it. Their energy is more consistent. Their mood is more stable. Their mental clarity is sharper. They wake up feeling better. They look better. They perform better physically and mentally. What's fascinating is how their brains process risk and reward differently. While most people focus on the immediate social benefits or the temporary relaxation alcohol provides, these individuals are playing a completely different game. They're thinking about tomorrow morning's workout, next week's presentation, next year's health. Their decision-making operates on an extended time horizon that fundamentally changes how they evaluate choices. The trauma-informed abstainers. Then there's a second group, and this one carries a different kind of weight. These are people who've experienced something that changed their relationship with alcohol forever. Maybe they struggled with addiction themselves. Maybe they watched a parent, sibling, or partner battle alcoholism. Maybe they grew up in a household where alcohol transformed loving people into strangers, where it caused pain instead of pleasure. For these individuals, avoiding alcohol isn't a lifestyle preference. It's a boundary, it's protection, it's survival. The psychology here is incredibly powerful because these people have developed what researchers call heightened threat sensitivity. Their brains have been trained through experience to recognize danger signals that others completely miss. They can walk into a party and immediately read the room, assess the drinking culture, identify the peer pressure dynamics, and spot potential problems before they unfold. It's almost like a sixth sense. And here's what's remarkable. These individuals have taken their pain and transformed it into wisdom. They've learned to trust their instincts over social expectations. They've developed the courage to prioritize their well-being even when it makes others uncomfortable. That's not weakness or being overly cautious. That's profound psychological strength and self-awareness. The consciousness seekers. The third category might surprise you. These are the spiritually or philosophically motivated abstainers. They're not avoiding alcohol because of health metrics or past trauma. They're avoiding it because they're seeking something deeper, something that alcohol fundamentally interferes with. Their psychology centers around presence, around experiencing reality fully rather than through a filter. They've made a connection between consciousness and clarity, between sobriety and awareness. For them, alcohol represents a barrier to the kind of authentic experience they're trying to cultivate in their lives. What's fascinating is how they've completely reframed pleasure and enjoyment. While most people see alcohol as enhancing fun, these individuals see it as dulling their ability to experience genuine joy, authentic connection, and deep satisfaction. They've discovered that the most profound experiences in life, the moments of real beauty, connection, and meaning, happen when you're fully present, not partially numbed. They've essentially rewired their understanding of what it means to have a good time. And they've found something that doesn't require a substance to access: the autonomous rebels. And then there's a fourth group that really challenges social norms. These are the people who don't drink simply because everyone expects them to. Their psychology is rooted in autonomy, in refusing to be controlled by external pressures or invisible social scripts. These individuals have recognized something most people never consciously acknowledge. They've seen how alcohol functions as a social conformity tool, a way to fit in, a method of group bonding that requires everyone to participate. And they've decided they want no part of it. Not necessarily because they think alcohol is bad, but because they refuse to need anything external to feel comfortable being themselves. Their choice is actually a statement about personal power. They're saying, I don't need your approval. I don't need to follow your script. And I certainly don't need a substance to access my personality or enjoy myself. What's striking about these social rebels is that they've mastered something most of us struggle with our entire lives. They've learned to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. They can sit in that awkward silence when someone asks why they're not drinking. They can handle the confused looks, the subtle pressure, the social friction that comes with going against the grain. And they do it because they value their independence more than they value fitting in. The psychological advantages. Now here's where things get really interesting. Research shows that people who maintain sobriety, regardless of their initial motivation, actually develop enhanced psychological resilience over time. Their brains adapt to function without the emotional cushion that alcohol provides. They learn to process stress, navigate anxiety, and handle social situations using their natural coping mechanisms rather than relying on external substances. This creates a fascinating developmental effect. When you remove alcohol from the equation, you're forced to develop genuine social skills, authentic confidence, and real emotional regulation. You can't hide behind liquid courage. You can't numb uncomfortable feelings. You can't blur the edges of social anxiety. You have to face everything directly, and that builds a kind of mental strength that most people never fully develop. Non-drinkers become skilled at sitting with discomfort, at processing emotions in real time, at navigating social complexity without a chemical buffer. These are psychological muscles that grow stronger through use. The social mirror effect. But let's talk about what happens in their social interactions, because this is where the psychology becomes really complex and revealing. When someone doesn't drink, they're not just making a personal choice, they're inadvertently holding up a mirror to everyone around them. And sometimes people really don't like what they see in that reflection. Think about it this way. If someone can have fun, be social, celebrate, relax, and enjoy life without alcohol, what does that imply about those who feel they can't? If someone can handle stress, navigate relationships, and cope with life's challenges without drinking, it challenges the narrative that alcohol is necessary or even helpful. This is why non-drinkers often face such intense, sometimes aggressive social pressure. It's rarely about them at all. It's about the discomfort their choice creates in others. Their sobriety becomes an unspoken question hanging in the air. Why do you need to drink? What are you trying to escape? What are you afraid to feel? But here's the twist that most people miss. Non-drinkers typically aren't judging anyone else. They're not trying to make a statement about other people's choices. They're simply living according to their own values, their own understanding of what works for them. The judgment, the defensiveness, the pressure to conform, that's all projection from the outside. The strength in the choice. What really stands out when you study the psychology of non-drinkers is the quiet strength it requires. We're not talking about willpower in the traditional sense. We're talking about something deeper. The ability to define yourself from the inside out, rather than letting society define you from the outside in. Non-drinkers have to repeatedly choose themselves over social acceptance. They have to get comfortable being the outlier, the one who's different, the person who doesn't go with the flow. That requires a solid sense of self, clear values, and the courage to stand by them even when it's inconvenient. And perhaps most importantly, they've learned to find their own sources of joy, relaxation, and connection. They've discovered that the things alcohol promises, confidence, fun, relaxation, connection, are all available without it. In fact, they're often more genuine, more sustainable, and more satisfying when they come from within rather than from a bottle. So the next time you encounter someone who doesn't drink, maybe pause before asking why. Maybe resist the urge to pressure them or make them feel weird. Because their choice isn't about you. It's not a judgment of your choices. It's simply them being honest about what works for their life, their body, their mind, and their values. And honestly, that kind of self-awareness and authenticity is something worth respecting, not questioning. The psychology of people who don't drink reveals something powerful about human potential. Our ability to go against social currents, to define our own path, and to find fulfillment on our own terms. That's not boring. That's actually pretty remarkable.